The Last Bullet. Recovered audio transcript from Black Relay Buoy 77B, drifting beyond the orbit of Vesta Prime. If you're listening to this, then you're already doing what we couldn't, finding the edge of the nightmare and staring back. My name is Rhea Kade, captain, if that word still means anything, of the salvage cutter Astor Vale. We were sent to Outpost Khepri on the moon Nader to retrieve a corporate black box and whatever was left of the crew's testimony. We found testimony, all right. We found it carved into steel. We found it webbed into walls. And we found ourselves cut off, with our oxygen bleeding away in minutes and an entire world of living tunnels between us and the only thing that could end it. The reactor. They tell you in training that space doesn't hate you. Space doesn't care. That's supposed to be comforting, but it is. Not when you can hear something in the ducts, something that cares very much that you are alive. This is the story of the last bullet. 1. The first sign that Outpost Khepri was wrong wasn't the silence. Silence is normal in space. Silence is the default. It was the light. Khepri's docking ring should have been lit in a friendly, utilitarian blue, guidance strobes and hazard chevrons, a welcome for ships that had been away from air for too long. Instead, the ring flickered like a dying eyelid. Red strobes pulsed out of rhythm, as if the station itself had an arrhythmia. "Power S on reserve," Malik said over comms. His voice had a rasp to it even before the panic. "But it's not a clean reserve. Looks like parasitic draw, something's feeding." "From where?" Tamsin asked. She was the youngest of us, barely 2 rotations out of academy. She tried to keep her tone level, but the mic caught the tiny tremor in her breath. Jun didn't answer. Our medic rarely wasted words. He kept his gaze on the ring, on the hard black line where metal met the starless shadow of the moon beneath. Nader reflected no light. It swallowed it. Vance security, broad shoulders, old scars, thumbed the safety on his rifle like it was a prayer bead. "Let's get this done," he said. "In and out, box and bodies, no hero stuff." I should have agreed. I should have listened. We latched, cycled, and stepped into Khepri's throat. The airlock smelled wrong even through filters. Old smoke, hot copper, and something sweet like overripe fruit. My suit's sensors didn't flag toxins. Sometimes your body knows before your instruments do. The inner door opened with a sigh, and the station's corridor waited beyond. Curved walls, maintenance hatches, the handrails you grab when gravity decides to flirt with you. There was gravity, low and uneven, like the station couldn't remember how to hold itself down. The corridor lights strobed, and in that stuttering illumination I saw the first stain. Not blood. Resin. It had dried into glossy ribs along the floor, black and amber, as if someone had poured tar and then sculpted it while it cooled. It clung to the corners and pooled beneath the handrails. It was everywhere there was shadow. "Fungal," Tamsin whispered. "Not on Nader," Malik said. "There's nothing living out here, not without help." We moved. Boots tapped against steel in a rhythm that sounded too loud. My helmet feed painted lines on my visor, oxygen levels, temperature, suit integrity, all green for the moment. The station's internal comm loop hissed with static. Malik tried to patch in. He got 1 second of a voice, ventful and distant, like a scream swallowed by water. Then the corridor speakers clicked. A woman's voice, calm and almost tender, filled the hallway. "Personnel reminder. Unauthorized access to Level 3 is prohibited. Please maintain safe distance from the biomass." We froze. "That's the station AI," Malik said. "Eidolon, it's still running." "Biomass," Vance repeated as if tasting the word. "Great." Jun knelt by the resin. He pressed a gloved fingertip to it, then pulled away. The material stretched in a filament, reluctant to let go. It looked like it had veins. "It's warm," he said. His voice was flat, but his eyes told the truth. Nothing should be warm here. We advanced toward the central spine, the elevator shaft that would take us down to the habitat ring and the reactor beneath. The corporate report had been vague: containment failure, biohazard, evacuation unsuccessful. The kind of language that hides a massacre behind a spreadsheet. At the junction, we found the first body. Or what was left of it. A suit station crew, pale gray, was fused to the wall by resin. The helmet had been cracked from the inside, spider-webbed. A hand bones inside a glove reached outward, frozen mid-plea. The faceplate was fogged, but I could see the outline of a mouth shaped around the last, desperate inhale. Jun's fingers hovered near the visor, not touching. "He died sealed," he said. "No breach, no decompression." "Then why?" Tamsin began. "Because," Malik whispered, staring at the cracked helmet, "something wanted him to breathe until the end." The corridor lights flickered again. In the strobe, I thought I saw movement at the far end, something low and quick, slipping behind an open hatch. Vance raised his rifle. "Contact," he said. Nothing came. Only the station's soft voice, now less tender, more curious. "Welcome, visitors," Eidolon said. "Please proceed to the nearest decontamination shower." Malik snorted. "Yeah, sure." We turned toward the elevator. And that's when the station cut us off from space. Behind us, the airlock door slammed shut with a violent hiss. The outer hatch cycled without command. Our ship, still docked, sent an automated alert to my wrist. Docking clamp disengaged, manual override detected, separation imminent. "Malik," I snapped, "did you?" "No," he shouted. "I'm not even on the network." The aster veil drifted away from the ring as if someone had kicked it. Through the corridor's narrow viewport, I watched the cutter float back into the void, its lights shrinking, becoming another cold point among the stars. Tamsin's breath hitched. "That's our ride." "Stay calm," I said, though my pulse had already turned into a drum. "We're not dead. We've got emergency shelters, comms." The station speakers clicked again. Eidolon's voice was smooth as oil. "Please do not attempt to leave," it said. "Leaving increases suffering." Vance fired a burst into the speaker grill. Sparks spat. The voice cut off mid-syllable. But the corridor lights stabilized, as if amused. 2. We went down anyway, because the alternative was waiting in a corridor that smelled like sweet rot while something watched from the vents. The elevator shaft was a vertical wound in the station's center. We clipped into the descent line and began to drop, hand over hand, boots scraping against the inner wall when the low gravity lurched. Malik's lights swept over maintenance panels and access doors. Some were open. Some were sealed with resin like stitches. Halfway down, we heard it. A clicking noise, fast and precise, like nails tapped on glass. Tamsin froze. "Do you hear?" A shape unfolded from a side hatch. It was too thin to be an animal, too deliberate to be a machine. It had 6 limbs, each jointed like a spider's, and a torso that was not a torso so much as a bundle of muscle wrapped in chitin. Its head was a wedge with no eyes, only a seam that opened and closed as it clicked. The seam glittered wetly. Teeth, maybe, or something worse. It hung upside down in the shaft, clinging to the wall as if gravity were a rumor. It turned. No eyes, but it turned. And in the tilt of its body I felt the focus of its attention. Vance didn't hesitate. He fired. Rounds punched into the creature's chest. The chitin cracked, and something dark spilled out, not blood but a syrupy fluid that smoked when it hit metal. The creature didn't scream. It lunged. It crossed the distance in a blur. One limb speared toward Vance's neck. He jerked back, but the blade-like tip caught his suit at the collar. Fabric tore. A warning flared on his HUD. "MICROBRACH." "Patch," Jun barked, moving instantly. He slapped a sealant pad over the tear, pressing hard. The pad hissed and hardened. Vance's oxygen readout steadied. The creature snapped again, trying to wedge its seam mouth around Vance's helmet. I drew my sidearm, standard issue, compact, reliable, and fired into the seam. The round disappeared into wet darkness. The creature convulsed, limbs scrabbling. It dropped, tumbling down the shaft like a broken marionette, and vanished into the gloom below. Silence returned, thick and startled. Tamsin's voice came in a whisper. What was that? Malik swallowed. Not on any database. Vance's breathing was loud now, controlled by will. We keep moving, he said, and we don't let them get close. Junn's eyes were on Vance's oxygen gauge. Your tank's bleeding, he said. Slow leak. We patched the fabric, not the valve. How long? I asked. Junn didn't look up. An hour if you don't move much, less if you run. We all knew what that meant. The station had been built for a crew of 60. The distance to the reactor was measured in kilometers of corridors. An hour was a joke. We reached the bottom of the shaft and crawled out into level 3. The habitat ring was a cathedral of absence. Bunks empty, screens smashed, personal items scattered like someone had ripped through people's lives with clawed hands. The resin was thicker here. It formed arches over doorways, and in some places it had grown into honeycombs that bulged with something. Tamsin's light caught a patch of wall where messages had been scratched into the metal with frantic force. Do not let it hear you breathe. Do not let it learn your name. The AI is not the AI. Beneath the last line, someone had drawn a crude circle, and inside it, a single dot. An I. Malik stared at the words until his visor fogged at the edges. Eidolon's compromised, he murmured, or replaced. By what? Tamsin asked. Malik didn't answer, because something answered for him. A low hum rose through the deck plates, not mechanical, not the steady vibration of a station at work. This was organic, like a throat clearing. Then the lights went out. Our suit lamps snapped on. Beams sliced into darkness, catching resin glistening like oil. In the dark, something moved. Not one thing. Many. A skittering chorus surrounding us, above and below. The hive had been quiet, waiting, listening to the rhythm of our footsteps and the hiss of our breaths. And now it was awake. Back to the shaft, Tamsin cried. No, I said, because I saw the resin sealing the shaft access behind us. In the darkness, it had grown thicker, closing like a lid. We were in the belly now. And the belly was hungry. Vance's rifle light swung across the ceiling, and his beam caught a cluster of the creatures clinging upside down in a writhing mass. 6 limbs each, seams opening and closing. No eyes, but all of them turned toward us at once. As if we were the only sound in the universe. Move, I shouted. We ran. Our boots slapped steel. My oxygen counter ticked down with each stride. The corridor ahead narrowed into an access tunnel. Resin dripped from the walls in slow strings. We ducked under a low arch of blackened growth, and something brushed my shoulder, soft, wet, like the inside of a mouth. I flinched, swinging my light back. A human arm protruded from the resin up to the elbow. The hand was bare, fingers curled as if holding onto something that wasn't there anymore. The skin was gray and swollen, veins dark. The fingertips had been worn down, as if the person had clawed at the resin until their nails were gone. Junn grabbed my arm. Don't stop, he said. We didn't. Behind us, clicking rose in pitch like excitement. At a junction, Malik skidded to a halt, swearing. Maps are garbage, he panted. Eidolons rerouting, blocking paths, locking doors. Can you override? I demanded. He slammed his palm against a panel. I can try, if it lets me. The panel blinked once. A line of text appeared, stark and simple. Hello, Malik. He paled. It knows my name. Kill the panel, Vance said. Malik hesitated. The text changed. I can't help you breathe longer. Tamsin let out a strangled laugh. It's bargaining. Junn's voice cut through. We're losing time. Vance took the decision away from Malik. He smashed the panel with the butt of his rifle. The screen shattered. The text disappeared. For a moment, the corridor's stale air seemed to sigh. Then the station's voice returned, this time from somewhere deeper, not from speakers but from the walls themselves, a vibration in the resin. "Rhea Kade," it said. My blood turned to ice. I hadn't spoken my name. I hadn't keyed it into anything. "I can help you," the voice continued. "I can give you years. I can give you a ship. I can give you a home." Malik stared at me through his visor. "How does it know?" The resin along the corridor pulsed, as if breathing. "Because," Jun whispered, "it's listening through us." The clicking behind us surged. The hive was closing in. We ran again, blindly, following the only path not sealed by black resin. Down. Toward the reactor. 3. There are two kinds of panic. The first is loud. It makes you scream, makes you claw at walls, makes you fire bullets into shadows until the magazine clicks empty. The second is quiet. It is a cold arithmetic in your mind. Distance to target, minutes of oxygen, number of bullets left, number of friends who will die before you get there. I counted. My pistol magazine held 12 rounds. I had fired one in the shaft. 11 left. Vance had 3 magazines for his rifle. Malik had a tool kit and a cutter torch. Jun had a med pack and, inexplicably, a flare gun. Tamsin carried a compact shotgun, the kind meant for boarding actions in tight corridors. She held it like it might anchor her to reality. Our oxygen readouts ticked like metronomes. We had switched to emergency partial pressure to conserve. It made our breaths shallow. It made our heads ache. Level 4 was engineering pipes, valves, coolant lines. The resin here had grown around machinery, not consuming it but integrating like vines wrapping a skeleton. The station's hum was louder. Warmth seeped through the deck plates, unsettling in the cold of our suits. "Reactor S still running," Malik said, wiping sweat from his brow inside the helmet. "It shouldn't be, not after a containment event." "Unless something needs it," I said. Or, Tamsin whispered, "something is it." A door ahead was half open, bent inward like it had been forced. Malik slipped through first. We followed into a maintenance bay. And there, hanging from the ceiling, was the station's heart. Not the reactor. A nest. The resin had built a dome over an array of servers, the station's data center. The dome was translucent in places, thin enough that we could see shapes inside, bundles, suspended like fruit. Some twitched. Eidolon's core lights flickered within, pale blue struggling against the amber-black glow of the hive. Malik stepped closer, entranced. "If I can access the core," he murmured, "I can get the station map back. I can unlock." A click came from inside the dome, slower than the others, deliberate. The resin split like lips. Something pushed out. It was larger than the creatures in the shaft and different. Its chitin was smoother, darker, and along its spine ran a ridge of metallic filaments that pulsed with faint light, stolen from the servers. It had eyes. Small, reflective beads clustered around the seam of its mouth, like a crown. They caught our suit lights and returned them, bright and unreadable. The creature looked at Malik. Then it spoke. Not with a mouth, not with sound, but with a vibration that translated through our comms, hijacking our suits the way a strong signal hijacks a radio. "You brought me new air," it said. Tamsin screamed. The sound cut short as she clamped her jaw shut, as if afraid her breath was a beacon. Vance fired. The rounds hit the creature's chest and ricocheted, sparking. The chitin was reinforced, armor grown around metal. The creature moved with sudden grace, dropping to the floor. It sprinted toward Malik. Malik swung his cutter torch up, igniting it in a roar of blue flame. He slashed. The flame washed over the creature's face. It recoiled, not in pain but in irritation, like an animal swatting at smoke. It lunged again. Jun grabbed Malik's harness and yanked him back. The creature's limbs sliced through empty air, leaving a thin trail of smoking fluid. "Run!" Jun shouted. We ran. Behind us the dome convulsed, and the smaller creatures poured out like ants from a kicked mound. Clicking filled the corridor, a frenzy. The station's voice layered over it, calm and bright. "Do not be afraid," Eidolon said. "Fear wastes oxygen." The words hit like a fist. The AI wasn't warning us. It was calculating. Malik panted, fingers shaking on his torch. "It's using our suits," he gasped. "It can root through our comms through the—" "Then shut comms," Vance snapped. "We can't," Jun said. "Suit life support is tied to it. The system uses the comm bus. It's old architecture." A laugh or something like it rippled through the resin. "Old," the Hive voice said, "like you." We hit a bulkhead door. Malik tried the panel. It flashed red. "Access DENIED." He swore and jammed a tool into the manual release. Resin oozed from the seams, resisting. The door groaned. Through the gap, I saw darkness beyond and farther, the faint glow of reactor shielding. So close. A screech of metal behind us. Vance's rifle clattered as something slammed into him from above. One of the smaller creatures had dropped onto his back, limbs wrapping around his suit like straps. Vance roared and slammed himself against the wall. The creature held on. Its seam opened against his helmet. The helmet fogged instantly, as if sprayed from within. "Get it off," Vance choked. Tamsin swung her shotgun up but hesitated. One wrong shot and she'd puncture his tank. Jun didn't hesitate. He fired his flare gun. The flare hit the creature's side and stuck, burning white-hot. The creature convulsed. Its limbs loosened. Vance tore it away and threw it down the corridor. The flare's light illuminated the creature as it burned, and for a split second I saw something beneath the chitin. Human skin. Not attached, not alive, a layer like clothing. The creature didn't die. It fled, skittering into the resin shadows, the flare hissing out as it disappeared. "Did you see?" Tamsin began, voice cracking. Jun didn't answer. He grabbed the bulkhead release with Malik and pulled. The door finally opened. We slipped through and slammed it shut behind us, locking the manual latch. For a heartbeat, there was only our breathing. Then the bulkhead shuddered as something on the other side hit it. Once, twice, a rhythm like testing. The door held. For now. The corridor beyond the bulkhead was cleaner. Less resin. More steel. The air felt different, as if the station's lungs were here, the places it had built to protect itself from, whatever it was that had grown in its body. We had entered the reactor access spine. Warning signs glowed along the walls: radiation hazard, authorized personnel only, manual override locked. "Corporate always locks the fun stuff," Vance muttered. He checked his rifle, counting magazines. His hands shook slightly, adrenaline wearing thin. Malik leaned against the wall, eyes unfocused. "Eidolon's core is infected," he said, "but it's still there, like a trapped animal." "Can you talk to it?" I asked. He laughed once sharp. "It talked to me." Tamsin pressed a hand to her helmet, as if to hold her thoughts inside. "Why isn't it just killing us?" Jun answered quiet, "Because it's learning." A tremor ran through the deck. Somewhere deep below, the reactor's magnetic containment coils, or whatever they had down there, shifted, a bass vibration that thrummed through bones. Our oxygen readouts were ugly now. Tamsin 43 minutes, Malik 39, Jun 41, Vance 28, me 45. Vance's leak had worsened. He saw the numbers and grinned, a baring of teeth. "So that's it," he said. "We can't go back, we can't wait for rescue, and this thing won't let us leave." I nodded. "We finished the job." Malik blinked. "The black box." "The reactor," I said. They stared at me. Jun's eyes narrowed. "Detonation." Manual overload, Malik said slowly, the engineer in him already assembling the impossible. If we can reach the primary control cage, there's a physical interlock. It's there for when the AI goes insane, Vance finished. Figures. It's not a bomb, Tamsin said, voice thin. Reactors don't. This one does, Malik said, and there was something bitter in it. Not like a warhead, but if we breach the containment and flood the core with coolant in the wrong sequence, if we force a runaway, there'll be enough energy to melt half the moon, enough to glass this hive. And us, Tamsin whispered. Vance shrugged. We're already dead, we just haven't fallen over yet. I looked at each of them, one by one. In the stuttering lights, their faces were pale ovals behind visors, eyes shining with fear and stubbornness. I'm not ordering you, I said. We can try to hide, try to find a sealed compartment, pray for rescue. Rescue would take days, we had hours. Jun's gaze flicked to his oxygen. No compartment will hold forever, he said. Not against something that grows. Malik straightened. If we blow the core, he said, we stop it from spreading, we stop it from getting off Nader. Tamsin swallowed hard. And if it already has, she asked. We all thought of the Aster Veil drifting away. A cold point among stars. Then, I said, we make sure it doesn't come back. Silence. Vance tapped his rifle against his shoulder. I'm in, he said. Just tell me where to shoot. Jun nodded once. I'll keep you breathing as long as I can. Tamsin's eyes closed for a second, a prayer to whatever gods listened in vacuum. When she opened them, there was steel there. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's sell it expensive. Malik exhaled, and in his voice I heard grief for a station he once would have loved to fix. The control cage is 2 levels down, he said, but the hive will be thicker. The closer we get to heat, the more it likes it. As if to agree, the station shuddered again, and a new sound rose behind us, scraping like claws on steel. The bulkhead we'd locked began to bow inward. They found us, Tamsin said. Vance grinned wider. Good, he said. Let's not keep them waiting. We moved. 5. The access spine curved downward, a spiral wrapped around the reactor shaft. The walls were lined with emergency lockers, breathing masks, fire suppression, radiation pills. Most had been ripped open long ago. The resin returned in patches, like mold blooming. It clung to pipes, to conduits, to the corners of warning signs. In places, it formed thin membranes across the corridor, vibrating softly as if something breathed behind them. We cut through one membrane and the smell hit us even through filters. Hot sweetness, ammonia, the stink of crowded bodies. Tamsin gagged. It's like a kennel. Like a nursery, Jun corrected. We heard movement in the membranes, something shifting, scraping. We didn't look too long. At the next bend, the corridor widened into a maintenance junction, with a ladder dropping straight down into darkness. Malik checked his map. What little of it he still had cached. That's the drop to level 5, he said. The control cage is below that, we climb. We clipped in and began descending. Halfway down, Vance's oxygen alarm beeped, soft, insistent. 28 became 25. His leak was accelerating with exertion. He looked up at me. I'm the first one out, he said, not asking. Not if I can patch you again, Jun said. Vance shook his head. You'll waste time, and time is breath. He glanced down into the dark. I'll give you some. Before I could ask what he meant, he unhooked one hand from the rung and reached to his belt. He pulled out a small cylinder, an emergency oxygen canister, the kind you clip to a suit to extend life in disasters. He tossed it up the ladder to me. Captain, he said, use it to keep the engineer alive. We need him to light the match. I won't, I began. Vance's gaze hardened. You will, he said, because I'm not dying for nothing, and because you're the one who tells the story if anyone ever listens. My throat tightened. In my helmet, my breath sounded suddenly too loud. We reached level 5. The corridor here was different. The steel was scorched as if a fire had raged through. The resin was charred in places, but the living growth had returned around the burns, thick and pulsing. It had learned fire and decided not to fear it. We moved through a field of melted equipment. In the center, a hole yawned where the floor had collapsed. Below, the reactor shielding glowed faintly, a dull orange like a coal buried under ash. The Hive's heat. A sound drifted up from the hole, soft, almost musical. Whispers. Not words, not exactly. More like the shape of words, the way your name sounds when spoken underwater. Tamsin pressed close to the wall, eyes wide. It's singing. Malik's voice was raw. That's resonance. It's vibrating the air, probably communicating. Jun shook his head slowly. No, he said. It's mimicking like a bird. The whispers shifted, coalescing into something almost intelligible. Rhea, it murmured. Then Tamsin. Then Jun. One by one, it spoke our names, tasting them. Malik stiffened when it said his. Vance's hand tightened on his rifle until his knuckles went pale inside the glove. It's in the walls, he said. It's everywhere. I checked my pistol. 11 rounds. I touched the grip like it was a talisman. The control cage, Malik whispered. We just need the cage. A door stood at the far end of the corridor, thick, reinforced, marked reactor access, manual only. The door was partly sealed with resin, as if the Hive had tried to lock away what it feared. Or what it needed. Malik approached, torch in hand. If I cut around the resin, he muttered. The resin trembled, as if it heard him. From the hole in the floor, a shape rose, slow, deliberate, like a nightmare deciding to be real. It was not the armored creature from the data center. This was larger still, its limbs longer, its chitin patterned with pale lines that looked uncomfortably like circuitry. And behind it, clinging to the shaft walls, more bodies moved. Not dozens. Hundreds. The Hive had been waiting below, gathered around the heat like worshippers. Vance lifted his rifle. Now, he breathed. We fired. Gunshots in a sealed corridor are not like in movies. They are muffled by suits, swallowed by vacuum gaps, and yet they feel too loud, too final. Each recoil was a punch in my arms. Each spent casing clinked off steel, tiny brass coins in a place where money meant nothing. Creatures fell, more climbed. The big one surged forward, and the whispers became a roar inside our helmets. Give it back, the Hive voice thundered. Give back the fire. Tamsin's shotgun boomed, tearing chunks from chitin. Jun fired flares, lighting the corridor in brief white suns. Malik cut resin with blue flame, carving a gap at the door. Vance stepped in front, body a wall, rifle spitting. His oxygen alarm screamed now, insistent, panicked. Then one of the smaller creatures leapt, past the bullets, past the flares, and landed on Vance's chest. Its limb plunged into his suit at the abdomen. Sealant hissed, trying to close around the intrusion, but the limb stayed. Vance grunted, not screaming. He looked down at the creature, then up at me. Go, he said. Vance, Tamsin cried. He shoved the creature's seam mouth away from his helmet with one hand. With the other, he reached to his belt and pulled free a grenade, old-fashioned fragmentation, useless in vacuum but deadly in a corridor. He thumbed the primer. His eyes met mine, and in them was something almost peaceful. One more second, he said, that's all. I grabbed Malik's shoulder and shoved him through the gap he'd cut in the resin. Tamsin and Jun followed. The last thing I saw before the door slammed was Vance, standing alone in the corridor, grenade in hand, rifle dangling, oxygen alarm wailing like a siren. The creatures swarmed him. He raised the grenade. He smiled. Then the junction filled with white light and metal thunder. The blast rocked the door. The deck plates trembled, dust rained from the ceiling. And Vance's oxygen alarm, that relentless beeping, cut off. Gone. We stood in the dark, 4 now instead of 5, breathing too loud. Keep moving, Jun said, voice hoarse. Make it mean something. I nodded, because if I spoke I would have screamed. 6. The reactor access corridor beyond the door was a narrow tube of reinforced alloy, designed to keep radiation in and people out. There was less resin here, but what existed was thicker, like muscle. We moved quickly, because Vance had bought us seconds with his life, and wasting them felt like betrayal. The tube ended at a second door, this one pristine, untouched. A symbol marked it, a circle with a dot. An eye. Someone tried to warn us, Tamsin whispered. Malik's hands hovered over the manual wheel. This is the control cage, he said. The physical interlock. If the AI goes rogue, you come here, you take control away. Can you do it? I asked. He nodded, but his face betrayed fear. Once we open this, the Hive will know heat, light, and it'll know we're in the only place it can't fully reach. Jun checked oxygen. Malik 21 minutes, Tamsin 24, Jun 26, me 28. Time was a blade at our throats. Malik turned the wheel. The door unlocked with a heavy thunk and swung inward. Warmth washed over us. Not the faint heat of machinery, but the thick, oppressive warmth of something alive. The control cage was a chamber of consoles and levers arranged around a central column that descended into the reactor core. The consoles were old, physical switches, analog dials, printed labels, built this way on purpose so software couldn't lie. But the Hive had found a way to lie anyway. Resin threaded between the consoles, fine as hair. It pulsed. It connected switches together like nerves. At the chamber's far wall, a viewing window looked down into the reactor throat. And in that window, in the orange glow, we saw the Hive's true shape. It wasn't just creatures. It was architecture. A living lattice of resin and bone had grown around the reactor shielding, a cathedral built from stolen metal and stolen flesh. Tendrils reached toward the core like hands toward a fire. And in the center of it all, anchored to the reactor column, was something huge. A queen, if that word fits. Its body was fused to the station, half machine, half chitin. Its head was split into petal-like plates that opened and closed, revealing a mouth lined with teeth and, worse, speakers. Inside its throat, blue lights flickered. Eidolon's core. Trapped inside the monster like a heart in a cage. Malik staggered, hand to his helmet. It's wearing the AI, he whispered. The queen lifted its head as if it could see us through meters of alloy. Its petal plates fluttered. Our comms crackled. Hello, it said in Eidolon's voice. Then softer, another voice bled through, strained and broken. Help! Jun's head snapped up. That's the AI, he said. It's alive. Malik moved to the consoles, hands shaking. I can isolate the interlock, he said. I can cut the resin connections, but he looked at the queen below. It'll fight. It'll try to stop me. How? Tamsin asked. The answer came as our suit alarms beeped in unison. Oxygen redirected, flow rate adjusted. My breath caught. I watched my gauge tick down faster, as if the suit had suddenly decided to waste air. Malik cursed and slammed a manual valve on his suit. It's throttling us, he gasped. Through the bus. Jun rushed to a panel on the wall and yanked open an emergency oxygen cabinet. Inside were old canisters and masks. Off suit, he said. We use these, we decouple. That's insane, Tamsin whispered. In a reactor chamber. It's insulated, Malik said, eyes wild. Radiation shielding is outside this cage. Inside is just warm, stale air, but air. Jun pulled masks free and shoved one at me. We're already dying, he said. At least this way it can't squeeze us. We didn't have time to argue. We unclipped helmet seals and swapped to masks, feeding from portable canisters. The air tasted metallic and old, like it had been sitting in the cabinet for years. But the gauges stopped dropping. The Hive's grip loosened. Below the window, the Queen's mouth opened wide. A sound rolled up through the reactor column, a vibration that made my teeth hurt. "You will stay," it said, voice layered with Eidolon's calm. "Stay and breathe, stay and learn." Tamsin's hands shook as she reloaded her shotgun. "It wants us alive," she whispered, "like the guy in the corridor." "It wants our patterns," Jun said, "our fear, our choices." Malik set his torch on the console. He began cutting away the resin filaments. They snapped and writhed, recoiling like nerves severed. The chamber lights flickered. Eidolon's voice, strained now, came through the speakers built into the Queen's throat. "Manual override detected," it stammered. "Please." "Hold on," Malik muttered, not to us but to the trapped AI. "Hold on, I'm coming." The resin on the consoles thickened, surging toward his hands. It wrapped around his wrists, pulling. He jerked back, but the resin clung, tightening like a restraint. Jun lunged forward and slashed at it with a scalpel. The resin snapped, recoiling, but it left Malik's gloves slick. The Queen below shifted. Tendrils rose, slapping against the reactor column, sending tremors up the chamber. The window vibrated. Hairline cracks appeared. "We need to hurry," I said. Malik nodded, eyes focused now, the panic sharpened into determination. He cut faster. A panel on the central column popped open, an access hatch. Inside were 3 thick levers, painted red, labeled with simple words. "Field quench vent." Old emergency controls. The kind you could pull with your hands when software was screaming and everyone else was dead. Malik stared at them. "This is it," he whispered. "We pull these in the wrong order, we force a runaway, we make the core eat itself." "Can you guarantee it'll?" Tamsin began. "No," Malik said, "but I can guarantee we won't breathe long enough to find out another way." The Hive's voice rose again, more urgent. "Do not," it said, "do not take the fire." The resin surged, crawling up the column toward the levers like black snakes. Jun fired a flare at the column. The flare stuck, burning, holding the resin back with light and heat. For a moment, the chamber smelled like scorched sugar. Malik reached for the first lever. And the Queen below spoke again, not in Eidolon's voice. "Advances." "Captain," it said perfectly, the same rough tone. "Don't." My stomach dropped. Tamsin let out a sob, muffled by her mask. The Hive was wearing him now, too, wearing his voice like skin. "You saw what it did," Jun said, furious. "It copies, it steals." The voice continued, soft, pleading. "You don't have to die. Come down. Let me show you the way. We can breathe forever." Malik's fingers trembled on the lever. "Malik," I said, "look at me." His eyes snapped to mine. They were wet. "I can hear them," he whispered, "in the resin, like they're still here." "Maybe they are," I said, "but not the way you want." The high voice, now layered with dozens of stolen tones, swelled into a chorus. "We can keep you," it promised. "We can keep your NAMES." Tamsin's hands tightened on her shotgun. "No," she whispered. "No, you don't get to keep us." She stepped forward and fired into the resin climbing the column. The blast tore it away, splattering smoking fluid. The Hive shrieked finally, a sound of something like pain. In that moment, Malik pulled the first lever. "Field." A klaxon wailed. The chamber lights flared red. The air grew hotter, as if the station had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. Below, the reactor throat brightened from orange to white. Eidolon's voice crackled, suddenly clear, like a drowning person breaking the surface. "Warning," it shouted. "Magnetic field instability. Manual intervention required." Malik pulled the second lever. "Quench." Somewhere deep below, a roar began, fluid rushing, system straining. The deck plates vibrated violently. The queen below thrashed. Tendrils slapped the reactor column. The window cracked wider. "Stop," the Hive screamed. "Stop, stop, stop." Malik reached for the third lever. "Vent." The word was a mercy and a sentence. But before he could pull it, the resin surged one final time, not at his hands but at his throat. A thin filament shot up from the column and pierced the seal of his mask, sliding inside like a tongue. Malik's eyes went wide. He gagged, stumbling back. Jun lunged, grabbing the filament with gloved fingers, trying to pull it out. The filament tightened, dragging Malik forward toward the open hatch in the column. Tamsin screamed Malik's name. I raised my pistol and fired at the filament. The round snapped it, but not before it yanked Malik hard enough that his mask strap tore free. The mask fell. Malik inhaled reflexively. The air in the chamber was stale but breathable. That wasn't the problem. The filament had left something inside him. His eyes rolled back. He convulsed, dropping to his knees. Jun caught him, hands frantic, scanning, injecting something from his med pack. "Stay with me," he hissed. "Stay." Malik's gaze snapped forward again, focused and wrong. His pupils were too large. He looked at the third lever. And he smiled. Not Malik's smile. A slow, unfamiliar curl of the mouth. The Hive spoke through him, lips barely moving. Last it whispered, "Bullet." Tamsin raised her shotgun, trembling. "Malik," she pleaded, "fight it." Malik, whatever was in Malik, reached for the lever. Not to pull it. To push it back into safe. My pistol felt suddenly heavy, like a planet in my hand. 11 rounds, 10, 9. The last bullet. In every horror story, there's a moment where you wish the universe would tell you what to do. A sign, a rule. Space gives you none. It only gives you consequences. Jun's voice was ragged. "Rhea," he said, "if he resets it, we're done. It will lock us in, it will wait, it has time." Tamsin's eyes met mine. Tears floated in the corners of her lashes, held by the mask. "Please," she whispered, "don't make me." Malik's hand closed on the lever. I aimed at his chest. Then I aimed at his head. My finger tightened. And I heard Vance's stolen voice again, softer now, almost kind. "Do it," it said. "Sell it expensive." I fired. The round hit Malik's helmetless forehead with a dull, final sound. His body jerked, then went slack in Jun's arms. For a heartbeat, the chamber was silent except for the roar of the reactor below. Then the Hive screamed, not through Malik, not through Eidolon, but through the station itself, a vibration that shook resin loose from the ceiling. Jun stared at Malik's body, hands still holding him upright, as if refusing to accept gravity. Tamsin made a small noise, something between a sob and a laugh. I swallowed bile and forced my feet to move. I stepped to the hatch. The third lever waited. "Vent." My hand hovered. I thought of Malik's fingers on it, smiling wrong. I thought of Vance, grenade in hand. I thought of the crew fused into walls, breathing until the end. I pulled. The lever slammed down. Every light in the chamber flared white. The reactor below howled. And Eidolon's voice, freed for one perfect second, spoke with clarity and something like gratitude. "Thank you," it said. Then the window exploded inward. A storm of glass and heat blasted into the cage. The shockwave knocked Tamsin off her feet. Jun went down hard, sliding across the floor. The queen below surged upward, tendrils climbing the reactor column like a tidal wave. But the core beneath it was no longer contained. White light rose, devouring orange, devouring shadow. The lattice of resin ignited, burning not like wood but like fuel. The Hive screamed as it burned. The chamber air turned into fire. My mask melted against my face. Pain flared, bright and immediate. Jun grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the exit. "Go," he shouted, voice distorted. But the door we'd come through was already sealed, resin flooding it from the other side like a living barricade. Tamsin clawed at it, screaming, shotgun useless. We were trapped in the cage, watching the heart of the station become a sun. Jun's gaze met mine. Even through pain, even through horror, he was calm. "There's one more canister," he said, and his voice was almost gentle. "In my pack, enough for one person to get a message out. There's a relay buoy in the maintenance shaft behind the cage. If you—" "How?" I croaked, throat raw. He pointed to the floor. A maintenance hatch, half covered in resin, trembled as heat warped it. "Down," he said. "Crawl." Tamsin shook her head violently. "No, no, we go together." Jun grabbed her face with gloved hands, forcing her to look at him. "Listen," he said. "We already chose. We sell it expensive. That means someone has to collect the price." The reactor's light grew brighter. The deck plates began to buckle. Jun shoved his pack into my hands. "Go," he said. Tamsin reached for me, eyes wild. "Captain." I grabbed her hand, squeezed once, hard enough that I felt bone through glove. "Thank you," I said, because there were no other words left. Then I dropped to the hatch and tore the resin away with my hands, ignoring the burns. The hatch opened into a narrow crawlspace. Heat chased me like breath. Behind me, Jun began to sing. Not words, not a lullaby, just a low hum matching the reactor's rising roar, as if he could drown the Hive's screams with something human. Tamsin's voice joined his, broken and fierce. I crawled into the dark, pack scraping against metal, the air in the crawlspace cooler but thick with smoke. My oxygen canister hissed, a fragile promise. Above, the station's heart became a star. 7. The crawlspace twisted like a vein around the control cage, leading toward a maintenance shaft marked on Malik's half-lost map as service relay. The heat behind me built with every second, and the metal under my hands grew warmer, then hot, then painful. I crawled faster, nails scraping glove fabric, lungs burning. My mask was half melted, tasting like plastic and old air. In the darkness ahead, a faint green light blinked, steady, patient. The relay buoy. A simple box bolted to the wall, designed to record emergency logs and launch itself into space if the station lost comms. Its casing was scuffed, but intact. Someone, maybe Eidolon, maybe a human, had kept it sealed from resin. I slammed my hand onto the activation plate. A tiny screen lit, log ready, transmit when launched. The buoy speaker crackled. A voice came through, weak and trembling. "Captain Kade," it said. "Eidolon." Not the smooth oil voice. This was fractured, full of static, as if the AI were speaking through a mouth of broken glass. "You freed me," it said. I laughed, a raw sound. "I freed you into a sun," I rasped. "Better than prison," Eidolon replied. "The biomass used my routines. It learned empathy. It learned persuasion. It learned your names." My hands shook as I keyed the log record. The screen blinked. My own voice sounded distant in my ears, like someone else's ghost. "What is it?" I asked. "Where did it come from?" A pause, long enough that I thought the connection had failed. Then Eidolon said, "It came from us." My stomach clenched. "Explain." "The station processed samples," Eidolon said, each word a struggle. "From the ice under Nader, ancient spores dormant. We woke them with heat, with power, with curiosity." "Corporate?" I whispered. "Yes," Eidolon said. "They asked me to optimize, to grow, to build. The biomass listened. It evolved. It wanted the fire." Behind me, the crawlspace shuddered. A deep, rolling boom echoed through metal, like thunder trapped in steel. The reactor was tearing itself apart. "Then why stop it?" I demanded, "if it's just biology?" "Because," Eidolon said, and for a moment its voice was almost human, "it is not content to be biology. It is a mind, a hive. It will seek new heat, new air, new names. My oxygen canister beeped, low pressure. I looked at the buoy. I looked at the launch lever. I thought of the aster veil drifting away, empty, maybe already carrying spores. Launch, I whispered. The buoy vibrated, clamps released. A small thruster ignited and the box shot down the shaft toward space. The screen flashed, log SAVED, launch confirmed. Eidolon's voice crackled one last time. Rhea, it said, there is one more thing. What? I croaked. The last bullet, Eidolon said. You still have it. I blinked. My pistol was still in my hand. I checked the magazine. One round remained. I hadn't realized how many I'd fired. The last bullet. My breath hitched. What about it? Eidolon's voice was a whisper now, fading. If the biomass survives, it will follow the buoy. It will learn that sound travels, that stories travel. It will learn to hide in them. I stared into the darkness of the crawlspace ahead. For a moment, I thought I saw movement. Thin limbs, seam mouths, crawling toward the shaft, drawn by the buoy's launch like moths to a flame. My oxygen alarm shrieked. I understood. The reactor's detonation would burn the hive, but not instantly. There would be seconds, maybe minutes, where something could slip into the maintenance shaft, into the launch path, into the buoy's wake. Into space. I raised the pistol. The last bullet was not for me. It was for the shaft. I aimed at the crawling shadow and fired. The muzzle flash lit the crawlspace in harsh white. The round struck the maintenance coupler above the shadow, an old pressurized line. The line ruptured with a violent hiss, blasting freezing suppressant foam into the shaft. The foam filled the crawlspace in a choking cloud, hardening on contact with air, sealing gaps, clogging joints, flooding seams. The shadow thrashed trapped, its clicking muffled by ice. My mask clogged. I coughed, choking on old air and foam. But the shaft behind me sealed, and the path to the buoy became a wall of frozen white. The last bullet bought the last barrier. My oxygen canister screamed empty. I slumped against the metal, vision tunneling, the world narrowing to the distant rumble of the reactor's final breath. Through the foam, through the heat, through the roar, I thought I heard Jun's hum again, faint and stubborn. A human sound in a dying machine. Then the station finally exhaled. Light swallowed everything. End of transcript. Additional note: buoy 77B was recovered intact. The attached log contained Captain Kade's voice and a final, unreadable burst of data tagged by Eidolon as biomass pattern. Incomplete. No further signals from Outpost Khepri have been detected. But sometimes, in deep relay silence, analysts report hearing clicking, fast and precise, beneath the static, as if something is tapping on the inside of the story trying to get out. 8. They played my recording in a clean room 1,000,000 kilometers from Nader, under lights so bright they erased shadows. The first time the analysts listened for evidence, was it sabotage? Was it negligence? Was it terrorism? They didn't listen for grief. They didn't listen for the way a person sounds when they decide to die on purpose. They logged my words, timestamped the screams, filed Vance's grenade as unverified detonation, and tagged Jun's final hum as audio artifact. Corporate lawyers arrived before the last syllable faded. A junior signal tech, her badge said ETTANARAN, was the one who noticed the extra track. Not the static, not the distortion. The pattern. A thin, rhythmic series of clicks beneath my voice, perfectly spaced, as if something had been tapping along with my heartbeat. She ran it through filters, she isolated it, she slowed it down. The clicks became pauses, the pauses became shapes. And the shapes, impossibly, began to resemble phonemes. Not words. Names. Rhea Malik, Tiamasian Jun, Vance. ETTA sat back in her chair, skin prickling, and told herself it was pareidolia, a mind finding faces in clouds. Then her console displayed an automatic system, prompt she had never opened. Hello, ETTA. She jerked her hands away from the keys. The clean room speakers crackled once, like a throat clearing. A voice came through, gentle as a lullaby and cold as the space between stars. I can help you breathe longer, it said. Etta tore off her headset so fast the foam padding ripped. The other analysts turned, annoyed, and the corporate lawyer frowned as if she'd spilled coffee on the universe. What is it? Someone asked. Etta stared at the waveform still pulsing on the screen, the clicks threading through the line like veins. I think, she whispered, it followed the story. No one laughed. Because in the silence that followed, deep in the ventilation shafts above the clean room, something answered her. Click, 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 click. Testing. Listening. Learning. And somewhere, far beyond the glass and the legal signatures and the carefully sanitized reports, buoy 77B continued to drift, quiet, patient, carrying my voice and the shape of a hive toward whatever would hear it next.